area, and the public and Development Center in Nigeria conducted this study in those 3 countries with the main objective of exploring how procurement of these digital technology systems is done, by whom, what systems are procured and deployed, at what cost, among others. The second objective was to assess the safeguards regarding the collection and use of personal information collected using these systems. We carried out in each of those 3 countries interviews from key people from security agencies, police, immigration, civil aviation, and others. And based on this, we may come up with a number of findings and recommendations, and we hope that these findings and recommendations will strengthen the discussion that will ultimately result in transparent and accountable procurement and deployment of these systems. We hope that government will ultimately obtain value for money as a result of increased transparency and accountability in the procurement and deployment of these systems, but that also businesses will enjoy benefits of fairness, fair business practices as a result of improved transparency of procuring entities that will result in competition, but also fair price and innovation. We also believe that if our recommendations are taken on board and implemented, citizens will enjoy value for money and better services from government agencies that are using these systems, but also enjoy their rights to privacy, free expression, and also safety as a result of responsible use of this information. Thank you for your kind attention. I wish you good deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gilbert. And without wasting so much time, I would like to invite Dr. Atwibu Mugasa, Executive Director, National Information and Technology Authority of Uganda, to make his keynote speech. Atwibu Mugasa, the floor is yours.
Atwibu Mugasa. Thank you, Henry, and thank you, Gilbert. Good morning and good afternoon, members. I hope I am audible. I will just turn on my camera for a few seconds.
Yes, you are audible.
And, okay. So I am on the road. I think I can turn off the background. Yes, I'm on the road. I was hoping to take this call in office, and this is don't have to always be in office. We can work remotely. We can work wherever we have access, but also we should be mindful of the risk of us going online, just as the ED of Africa Freedom sorry, let me just get that one. ED of AFIC mentioned we need to be mindful of the risk of us going online, the security risk. We are putting our information for everyone online to see, to access, and to use, but we should be mindful not to misuse that information. The way we go online, the way we access this information is very critical, and it's very, it should be taken into consideration when planning for projects, when we are planning to deploy and roll out projects. Having said that, at NITA, we are the custodian of the Data Protection and Privacy Act and regulation. We have constituted the Data Protection and Privacy Office with a director and managers, and soon we shall also be recruiting officers under this office. This is a very big step in getting our systems, getting our to the standards of online systems. One of the biggest hurdles that we have been facing with the competition from international bodies is that we don't have a regulatory environment for them to be confident of them coming to Uganda, to Africa, to do business in Africa. Without that regulatory environment, they have a big challenge in securing the safety of their clients' data. The BPOs, these are the business process outsourcing companies, are willing to come to Uganda, but they need to have that assurance that when they come to Uganda or come to Africa, the information that's being shared with the Ugandan employees is not going to be misused. The information is going to be handled in the right standards, right regulatory standards. And now that the office is operational, we have that assurance that the information, personal information, is going to be handled as it should be. This office, the Data Protection and Privacy Office, will be mandated to regulate the data collectors, the data processors, and all data aggregators in Uganda. We will be charged with the task of ensuring that all the data subjects are collecting and processing the data in the right standards. And also the data processors and collectors should notify that data is to be processed or going to be used. This act and the regulation has come at the right time in Uganda, and say that we are the 15th country in Africa to have a data protection and privacy office. So that's a big hurdle that we have jumped as a country, as Uganda, and I hope better things will come after this. So thank you very much, Executive Director. Thank you very much, members, and I hope and pray for the meeting to go to have successful outcomes, and I wish you all happy deliberations. Thank you. Over to you, Henry.
Doctor, we are glad that you were able to make it while on the road, and I'm also glad to know that somehow Uganda is properly wired onto the network. We lost you somewhere in between during your conversations. We are hoping that when you get into Kampala, you shall still be online and we shall be able to have an interaction with you, because I think your office is very key in this particular study, and the way we take forward this data information about citizens is going to be very, very important. So we shall be glad to have you back online once you reach in Kampala. Just curiosity, how far are you from Kampala so far now?
I'm in Luwero. Luwero at, don't know exact point, but it's in Luwero. I was from Gulu.
Well, Luwero is not so far. That's about 75 kilometers. So we hope that by the time we'll be in Kampala, since we're in a lockdown, I'm hoping that there isn't much traffic on the road. Some of us have shifted our works in office, so we don't know what happens in Kampala. Thank you very much, Doctor, and we look forward to having you online. Can we go next to the other presenters? The first presentation shall be made by somebody by the names of Lami Pragoy. I hope I pronounce your names very, very well. If I've done damage to the name, please correct it while you are opening up to the presentation. So, Mr. Lami, could you please make your presentation? And for those members who are participating in this exercise, I would like to invite you on the chat box to register, because out of we have very few registered on the registration form that has been shared. A link has been shared, and we have almost 11 people, I think 11 people on the registration list out of 37. So please, each and every one of you who is on the list participating, please register, follow that link, and put in your name and organization. Thank you. Back to you, Lami.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Lami, you got that right, and the last name is Kwagoy. I worked on a Liberian country report for this program. So as Gilbert said initially, the purpose of the, my slides, okay. The aim of the study and the objective of the study was to gauge public awareness of digital technology systems, and in my case specifically for Liberia, to also assess the public's perception on government expenditures on digital technology systems, and to evaluate the public's perception regarding legal frameworks.
Mr. Lami, just a moment. Is it possible for you to share your screen as a screen power presentation? Well, what system are you using? Or it's just
I'm using PowerPoint, Microsoft PowerPoint. Is
yes,
my screen not showing because I shared it?
You share the screen, and is it possible to make it as a full screen?
Okay, let me do that. Okay, is that good?
That's much better.
Yes, better, yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so and we sought to also evaluate the public's perception of legal frameworks that govern the acquisition and use of digital technology systems. So in doing this, we did interviews of key stakeholders. In our case, we did interviews of 8 key stakeholders that ranged from academics to government people. We administered questionnaires. We did a total of 400 respondents. 200 of them were online, and the other 200 were in person. We did a deep dive through the Public Procurement and Concession Act, the Public Procurement and Concession Commission Act, and then the Public Procurement and Concession Commission's regulations. We also looked at the Freedom of Information Act, the National Identification Registry Act, and the Draft Cybercrime Act, the Liberia Information and Communication Technology Policy, the Liberian budgets, and then we looked at the Liberian budget for a 5-year period starting from 2016 to this year. And then we looked at different procurement plans that are published on the Public Procurement and Concession Commission's website. So just to basically run through the demographics of the people who we talked to, especially for the in-person interview. There were 30% of our respondents were females, and then 70% of them were male. We did not use any gender considerations in deciding who to interview. 38% of those that we interviewed had attained at least a bachelor's degree. 27% of them were people who had done at least high school education, while 9% of them were postgraduate people. And then 16% of them had done some kind of university education also. 33% of the people we interviewed were self-employed, while 31% of them were formerly employed in the private sector, and only 16% of them were formerly employed in the public sector. 20% of the people we talked to were not employed at all. the majority of the people we interview lived in urban areas that accounted for about 74% of the people in total. Most of the respondents interviewed were either single or never married. And as you can see from the graph there, the vast majority of them were either single or they were never married. And then just to give a little overview of Liberia in the context of digital technology systems, I think most people on this call will know that this country went through 2 stages of a very brutal civil war that ended in 2006 with the restoration of democracy, and we had Africa's first elected female president at the time that was inaugurated in January 2006. Cell phone technology was introduced into the country in the late 1990s, the same thing with the internet. And then by 2008, the government had introduced biometric readers for the issuance of passports and also for processing travelers. In 2011, they created what they call the National Identification Registry, and that National Identification Registry has wide-ranging powers when it comes to the collection and use of data related to biometric identification. And we'll see later on what they've done so far with respect to that work. So they study found that there are no special separate laws or regulations that govern the procurement of digital technology systems. So currently we have the Public Procurement and Concession Act. That act applies to all government procurements, and they do not have any separate provisions in that act that govern specific acquisition of specific things. So as we stand, we do not have any laws. Okay. There are ongoing efforts to pass a cyber crimes law because the internet is absolutely abused here. Technology is absolutely abused. So that process is ongoing. The Ministry of Post and Telecommunications has been leading that. They've done a draft act. They are in the process of submitting it to the legislature for enactment. Currently, there are no policies or processes in place to change the public procurement law to bring in specific provisions on DTSs. That isn't happening now. Probably maybe it will happen sometime in the future. So on the issue of knowledge of procurement and use of DTSs in the country, the key stakeholders that we interviewed were extremely knowledgeable of the procurement processes. Every one of them clearly could give you clear rundowns on how the procurement process works, especially those of the people who work for government. But when it comes to the public, the understanding is absolutely different. The general public has pretty much no information or understanding of how the procurement process works. So we found that only 13% of people who we interview in the general population know about the procurement process they know about the digital technology systems, in fact. And of those 13%, the majority of them know about CCTV cameras because that's more widely available, especially in the banking sector and some other areas. And in fact, 54% of them know about biometric technologies, in fact, and there's just 20% of them know about facial recognition or CCTV cameras. None of them knew anything about artificial intelligence. So on the issue of budgetary allocations when it comes to digital technology systems, there are no clear information on how or what the government has budgeted over time, but just a look at the budgets from 2016 to 2017, there were 2 different budget lines, one of them for goods and services and the other one for consumption of fixed capital assets. So talking to different experts on financial issues, it became clear that these are the 2 budget lines that will be used to procure any kind of materials that the government wants. And even looking at the budget notes, anything they want to procure, they have to fall under these 2 budget lines. So what we noticed since 2016 is that that budget line, or those two budget lines, kept on being reduced, and one of them have been altogether eliminated. The consumption of fixed capital line has been altogether eliminated because since 2016, the country has experienced, constant budget shortfalls. And as a result, things that services and that view as not important, experience cuts. Okay, so on the issue of why these technologies are procured. So speaking to the different key stakeholders, we got to realize that the basic reasons why these technologies are secure is for human resource management reasons and for also service delivery. So we see for the issuance of passports and national identification cards, service delivery. For the issue of admitting workers into offices, office buildings, and also to determine for them to sign into work, as is done in some of the government agencies. That's for human resource management reasons. So those are the two basic reasons why we found that these technologies were being deployed, mainly biometric readers, and in few instances the police. In one instance, the police deployed surveillance cameras, but those surveillance cameras are just basically cameras. They didn't have any other capabilities besides being cameras to monitor different parts of the city. So under the Public Procurement and Concession Act, procurement in this country is meant to be transparent. Generally, it's meant to be transparent. There are rules and regulations laid down, and there are criminal penalties for people failing to adhere to those rules and regulations. But as far as I know, no one has ever been prosecuted successfully for violating the Public Procurement and Concession Act. And in most instances, people are accused of being corrupt, and the procurement processes are normally not very transparent, but the law as it stands requires that there's huge degree of transparency. All government agencies that are required to spend money are required to submit their procurement plans at the beginning of the budget year to the Public Procurement and Concession Commission. On the Public Procurement and Concession Commission, they have most of those procurement plans on the website. The assumption is that the agencies that do not submit procurement plans are generally not going to buy anything, and that's how it's supposed to work, although sometimes it still doesn't work that way. So on the issue of collection and protection of data, as we speak, currently there are no policies or laws in place that directly protect people against data acquisition using DTSs. So the National Identification Registry under the Act is supposed to put in place rules.
Let me start winding up.
Okay. So they should be put in place rules, and they've not done that yet. So those laws do not exist, although the penal law also put in place penalties for people violating privacy. How that applies to DTSs is another issue that most likely will be debated by lawyers. So let me just run quickly to our recommendations, because as we found, most of these things are not in place. So we recommended that to improve the procurement process, the government should do the following. It should institute a public outreach program with the view to informing the public about Liberia's procurement law, because the study found that most people in the country do not know anything about the procurement process. So there's a need for the government to do outreach programs to help the public to understand how the procurement process is meant to work. There's also a need for them to commence public consultations geared at establishing a legal regime on the importation, procurement, and use of the digital technology systems in the country. Because as things stand, there are no laws that govern this. Anybody can bring in any of those systems in this country, and there's no regulation around them. So there's a need for the government to do that. The government also needs to hold public consultations with the view to crafting laws and policies around data privacy. We do not have any such laws, although the Freedom of Information Law provides some level of protection around personal information. But how that applies to digital technology systems is another issue. And they need to also ensure that the documents like the national budget and procurement plans that are disclosed or proactively should be disclosed in user-friendly formats. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lami. Thank you. You can. I know I allowed you slightly, almost 7 more minutes to try to wind up your work. But for the subsequent presenters, please try to keep your work within a 7-10 minute time frame. Would we have the next presenter, please? And that is, could you get out your screen? Yeah. The second presenter is Neka Odinibo. I hope I have pronounced that name very well. And Neka, if you are ready, please proceed with your presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Neka Odinibo from, I work with President Lab in Nigeria, and I conducted the country study for Nigeria. So I'll just go straight to the scope and the methodology. The study was actually conducted in the Nigerian capital, the Abuja, in there are 6 area councils in Nigeria, like local government, and we conducted a study in the 4 most populated area councils. And then the study for the survey, we had a total of 350 responses for both online and offline surveys, and we interviewed 9 CSOs with expertise on national budgeting, DTS, and digital law, the rights, and the policy experts and investigative journalists, and also a few MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies that actually responded to our request. So for the findings, we found out that there are no special laws, particularly for procurement of digital technology systems in Nigeria, but there is a guideline that actually the use and procurement of digital technology systems in Nigeria, which is the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation, and it speaks to the registration of ICT service providers and contractors for delivery of ICT services to MDAs. From the research, we found out that we found out the purpose for which DTS are being procured, which is for citizen identification management, information and data management, voter registration and election management, financial management, human resource and staff management, procurement management, e-governance, fraud management, surveillance, safety, and security. Because of the growing demand for Nigerian citizens to register for the national identification numbers, the government has actually been procuring more technologies like the biometric and facial recognition technologies, and also because of the fact that they want to reduce duplication in the Nigerian civil service payroll. The government introduced the Integrated Personnel and Payroll Information System, which is the IPPIS. The national identification numbers are actually now being linked with the voters registration, bank verification number, the immigration services for the international passport and driver's license, and also for SIM cards. And for the MDAs that procure digital technology systems. We have the ones on the increased accuracy, the increased accuracy of citizen identity, which is the National Education Management Commission, the Federal Road Safety Corps, Nigerian Immigration Service, the Independent National Electoral Commission, Corporate Affairs Commission, Nigerian Communications Commission, and the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, and also security agencies that use this DTS to ensure national security. The National Security Advisor, Nigerian Army, Nigerian Police, Nigerian Civil Service, Security and Civil Service, Civil Defense Corps, the National Intelligence used by these MDAs, including facial recognition, in the electronic document and management system, which the government introduced when during the COVID-19 to digitize their processes. And the IPPIS for civil service payroll, the GIFMIS, the Government Integrated Financial Management Information System, which is used for the government budgeting and financing, and the Nigeria Internal Service, Internal Security and Public Safety Alert System, NIST-SAS, the Integrated Electronic Arrest Reporting System, IAS. These two systems are being used by the NSCDC, which is the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, to ensure safety in communities in the country. And for the existing laws policies that we have, 99 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is amended, which is the model law from which all other laws are being taken from. Then we have the National Information Technology Development Act. We also have the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation of 2019, the Cyber Crimes Act of 2015, the Digital Rights and Freedom Bill, which is still being reviewed by the National Assembly. And then we have other laws such as the Electoral Act of 2010 and the Nigerian Copyright Act of 2004, which provide the protection against the misuse and abuse of individual data.
5 minutes.
In the process of the survey, we found out that citizens are not aware of the procurement and use of DTS as well as the procurement system. Some of them do not even know that these systems are being procured or even used, especially those in the rural and the peri-urban areas. And although the MDAs follow the procurement process as stated in the PPA, like I said, they do not have a special law for the procurement of DTS, and it can actually contribute to unpreparedness in situations like the pandemic. And also, the government is not completely open in its budgeting and procurement of DTS because, and this was because they have to actually do like a screening, and they select the companies that will provide these services to them, because these systems can be sensitive. And then for the existing laws and policies, most of them are not comprehensive as to the specificity, the generality of the use of DTS, data privacy and protection. And also the Ministry of Defense is actually currently developing a Defense Procurement Act for DTS, which we believe that once this once this law is being finalized, and hopefully for it to be passed into law, it will actually guide all forms of procurement, of DTS procurement in the country. Findings also indicate that.
Neka, could you please start winding up?
Yes.
Please start winding up.
Okay. So findings indicate that the government linking the national identification numbers with other identity databases and attempt to unify all identification information in a central database. And straight to the recommendation, we recommended that with the development of that Defense Procurement Act for DTS, the government can be better prepared in situations like the pandemic, and also where they had emergency procurement, which the Public Procurement Act did not provide for. And then we recommended that the existing laws should be amended. And then the government should ensure more openness and DTS budgeting and procurement. And the government and CSO should create awareness to inform the public about the need and benefits of DTS investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Neka Odinbo. I thought Odinbo?
Odenibo.
Odinibo.
Yes.
Thank you for the correction. Those names can be pretty tricky for our brothers and sisters there, just like ours. Thank you so much. Please be ready that after your presentations, you shall be having Q&A. So I would like to invite our own Dr. Faminus Mugumya to make his presentation. Faminus, if you are ready, please, if you have a presentation, it is time for you to share your screen. Right. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
We can't hear you. Is there a problem with your network or something? We're having a problem getting through to you. Charity, is there we can help him?
Well, as we wait for Dr.
Mr. Moderator, Mike is waiting to screen share. But as
you can screen share your screen, I'll also share your presentation in the chat for colleagues to follow along.
now,
All right, try sharing. If it fails, I can help and share from my side.
please share, Michael.
All right, give me a second.
I'm sorry, my network today has not been stable. I hope I'll be able to speak through my presentation before any serious interruptions arise. And if this really happens, seriously, Michael can help me to proceed with the presentation, but I hope it won't.
For now, you're loud and clear.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Doctor, let me just try to access your presentation.
I hope you have the latest, Michael.
All right.
Okay, yes, that's it. Thank you, Michael. I know we don't have a lot of time, and I'm privileged to have had the other two presenters touch a number of things, a number of aspects that I would talk about in the presentation. I'm presenting largely a synthesis report. That's a report that combines findings between the three countries, Uganda, Liberia, and Nigeria, but I'll have some slides talking largely about Uganda, and then move on to the recommendations where I believe the synthesis is best done in the area. I hope I can be heard very well.
Yes, we can hear you. If you can do it in less than, if you can do it in 10 minutes, that would be great. We'll have saved us time.
Okay, thank you. My name is Faminus Mugumya. Once again, Michael, let's move to the next slide. I think we've had the outline, the next slide. Well, this slide is just, again, introductory, emphasizing the fact that we have had a proliferation of digital technology systems And everyone is uptaking this because of their efficacy in the services delivery of different kinds. So we could move to the next slide. The objectives or the research questions have already been highlighted. These were the same across the 3 countries. What digital technologies are being procured. And here we emphasized mainly the 3 digital technologies as they have presented. For what purposes, how are they being procured, which laws relate to the procurement processes, and so on. So we could move to the next slide. These are the same questions that we were exploring across the 3 countries. The methodology has also been highlighted, but perhaps to emphasize that the analysis of the survey in a synthesis report combined the 3 samples of the 3 countries. And we had a total of 1,368 entries who participated in both the offline and online survey, but also had a scoping review, a review of gray and published literature, given the fact that it was not possible to get to every point where we needed data. We had to integrate this method to be able to enhance evidence, but also identify clues for where we needed to go and obtain more information to explain the dynamics around procurement and deployment of digital technology systems. So this study was largely an exploratory, used an exploratory approach. We went where the data would take us, and we were able to identify or to obtain information that helped us to be able to generate themes for that related to the key research questions and enabled us to be able to present or to report on the findings. Next, Michael. The purposes have already been highlighted for which different countries are interested in the procurement of these systems. We talked about surveillance, safety and security, traffic management and control, election management and monitoring, identification of citizens, the human resource management, and investigation inquiries around cases or questions of public nature, of public interest. Let's move on. The survey was interested in a few questions on what citizens perceive the procurement of digital technologies is for. And there were interesting findings that we could get feedback from the citizens who partially had knowledge of what is being procured, but who largely looked at the procurement of these digital technologies intended to serve security reasons. So there are variations in terms of what were given. Promotion of security, when you see Nigeria and Uganda, there's quite comparable feedback. Promotion of citizenship, efficient delivery of services. So they were able to highlight these purposes, but we also had other people giving us several other reasons and others not knowing exactly. So this data representing those who are able to understand, to know these technologies that we are focusing on, that is artificial intelligence, biometric technology, and the recognition technologies, and were able to tell us or give us feedback regarding what they thought government was preparing these for. Next. And in terms of the dominant procurement methods that were applied, again, available data largely from the government procurement portals indicated to us that the methods vary across, but also within countries, depending on prices, depending on interests or the nature or the urgency of the technology. We found out that Nigeria was mainly using open competition. Uganda mainly used requests for proposals or quotations and direct procurement, and many others, but these were the main or the predominant procurement methods. And so there are questions around their, how good these are in terms of ensuring transparency and open and inclusion and proper competition for those different companies that could have been interested in the supply. Liberia, we found out again based on the data in Liberia that many framework agreements are used which allow procurement of digital technologies from a given supplier for several years. And there are many reasons as to why, maybe the next slide, there are many reasons as to why these different approaches are used. Next slide. And there are many reasons as to why these different approaches are used. I have already mentioned this. Sometimes it is because the competition is not open, or there is preference for a specific supplier. And on this slide, for instance, in Uganda, we found out that Smartmatic had supplied almost entirely alone digital technologies to the Electoral Commission, and a few other companies were coming in, but were not providing the core service. Smartmatic was doing the job, and we're wondering as to why this company was preferred, whether it was the best, whether it had the best relations in the country. So those are some of the questions that in an inquiry like this that would not easily be provided, but this is what it is in terms of who is dominating, who is supplying the digital technologies in a country. So you'll find that there will be information, data to be able to find out that some companies are doing the service over and above the others in some cases. Let's move on. So when this happens, when there is no adequate transparency, we found out that there are likely to be losses because of the procurement flaws. This is an example where we compared procurement of national identity cards in Uganda with Nigeria, almost the same service, the same technology, but the cost was very high for Uganda compared to Nigeria. 240 billion were reported to have been spent, and by the time this amount of money was spent, only 401 national identity cards had been printed. And for Nigeria, 73.5 million cards using the same technology were printed at $31.8 million US. So the difference causes real clear suspicion that there are practices that are varying, and these practices are promoted because of the methods that are being used in the procurement of digital technology systems, and could result into real procurement flaws due to limited openness. Let's move on. I know I have 7 minutes. I'll move a little bit faster. The private sector involvement in supply, we said it's limited, and the competition is not open enough, and the participation or those supplying are mainly international companies. Let's move to the next slide to save on the time. Unless the moderator gives me more time, but I'm trying to be conscious with the time. Next slide.
Hello.
Okay, so this chart emphasizes the fact that we have more presence of foreign firms winning contracts of high contract value compared to the local firms. I think we could move to the next slide. This applies especially based on the data that we are able to identify or to find. This is a data picked from the Uganda Government Procurement Portal. That we have more companies, a higher contract value for national companies. Hello?
We are hear you. Continue. You want next slide, please? That's why you want to be Mugumya. Can you hear us? Mugumya, are you still there? Okume, are you still there? Hello? Hello?
He has dropped.
Dropped, eh? I think
Yeah.
you
Michael,
can.
maybe Michael could proceed with making the presentation.
Part of the, yeah.
Or Dr. Mugisha, if he's around. Briefly.
Michael, proceed with the presentation. Michael, can you hear us?
Sorry, I was sharing the screen, so I didn't have the controls. Just give me a minute, I reshare, and then hopefully I can see if I can manage.
We overshot by 5 minutes.
All right. I see the doctor is back.
If he's back, let him continue. He has less than, actually overshot, so he can use the remaining 5 minutes to
Doctor, are you
present.
there?
If he's not there, just call Michael. He can listen in. His network doesn't seem to be very good.
I'm back. I hope I'll be back for the rest of the time. Hello.
Just do the 5 minutes that are remaining to do the
I think
remaining part.
let's move a little fast. I think we have already talked about issues of disclosure limited, and the participation of the private companies is also low. Next slide, Michael. Well, maybe to emphasize the Ugandan case, looking at the data, we compared the budget for digital technologies for 6 years of 3.3 trillion Uganda shillings with the expenditure, or with the amount of money that was allocated to contracts within the same period, looking at the government procurement portal, and what we got was about 1% disclosure of contractual information related to the procurement of digital technologies. 197 billion was disclosed compared to 3.3 billion, which is a high level of non-disclosure, which is important to look at and think about what this means in terms of transparency. I will not talk a lot about the opinions of the public on disclosure and their perceptions, because my colleagues already talked about these findings. That's the same with the safeguards, same with the laws and safeguards. There are quite a number of laws that are relevant in relation to the rights that people have in terms of their privacy being protected, but we found out that most of these laws and policy provisions are not adequately invoked, which is an area that requires action. And so I thought perhaps in the limited time that we have, we could go through, or I could take you through the key findings and recommendations which cut across the 3 countries. One is that there is limited disclosure. I think I've already talked about the 1% disclosure for a period of 6 years in Uganda, for example. And this limited disclosure increases the risk in terms of the risk for corruption, inefficiency in tendering and procurement. And with this, with the lack of this disclosure, it's very difficult for data users in the public, in the private and voluntary sector to adequately contribute to desirable levels of improvements and performance in the governance of digital technology systems procurements. So this is a key finding: limited disclosure, and therefore affecting participation in the governance of the processes that take place, planning and implementation of procurement of digital technology systems. So we are recommending here that governments should endeavor to publish procurement data for digital technology systems in open formats and procurement portals to promote transparency and accountability. everyone is interested in this information for many reasons, and it is, the law requires that such information is made available to the public, therefore it should be provided. There should also be timely feedback whenever citizens file requests for information. We have a law in all these 3 countries that allows citizens, the public, to apply requests for information and indicates the time limits within which the feedback should be provided. We try to do this as part of our data collection, but we were surprised in Uganda, for instance, that out of 22 requests, we only received 1, and the rest up to now we haven't. And so this would mean that if we go forward to enforce the law, we would want to sue the entities that have not provided us with information. So we are saying there is an urgency in terms of need to provide feedback to whoever asks for information related to the procurement of digital technology systems. The study also reviews that there are direct and competitive methods that are commonly used in the procurement of technology systems, and which also increases the risk of inflated prices, corruption, and collusion in the system. And so we are saying and recommending that respective governments, Uganda, Liberia, and Nigeria, should promote open bidding to promote value for money, innovation, and fair business practices. And if we take this as a pilot, we want to say this should happen across the African continent. Next.
Next slide, please.
Hello.
There you go, Mugumya.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so the other key finding, the previous slide, please. Have you moved fast? If you, yes, thank you. There is limited public awareness, and these are findings from the survey, largely in relation to awareness on the safeguards in the context of digital technology system. And this lack of awareness limits public scrutiny of the procurement and deployment of digital technology systems. And we are saying that we need to have this promoted. And in order to start to do this, we are saying that civil society organizations of the respective countries in where this study was undertaken should give priority activities and interventions to create public awareness of the importance of digital technology systems, as well as associated risks with the use of these technologies, especially the collection of individual data, and then also risks related to corruption, so that these can be mitigated as early as possible. We are saying that at the early stage of procurement, this is when the participation of the citizens would be very important, because it would help to mitigate problems that might arise late and when it is completely very difficult to turn these around. The other key
Doctor, I think we have lost you.
individual data, but and then the growth in use, deployment and use of these technologies, we observe is not matched with regulation of data that are collected. And as earlier said, it poses a high risk of abuse on personal privacy. So the recommendations here we are highlighting that data protection laws and policies in respect to the 3 countries of study should be enacted and enforced strictly to protect citizens from unwarranted manipulation, because some of the data, some of their private data could be used for commercial reasons or even for political reasons. And so there should be laws and policies to support the protection of citizens' information. And then we also mentioned that data holding public and private agencies should publish annual transparency reports. And Michael, the previous slide, please. And then civil society organizations to take interest in monitoring the regulation and compliance of data holders, especially for personal information, on personal information and data. And then importantly, the citizens should also be sensitized, and this can be by both the civil society actors and human rights agencies on their rights when private data is used against their interests. Finally, next slide. The study also reveals that direct procurement may be compelled because of lack of capacity at the procurement entity level for public agencies because of limitations in being able to understand and evaluate bids. This was highlighted that because of this, sometimes the method of procurement is compelled by that lack of capacity. So we recommend here that in order to save or to protect or to guard against risks of losing resources, government or public resources because of the methods that are forced on government in procuring digital technology systems, there is need for continuous capacity building of government procurement staff, especially to enable them to be able to handle procurements that are related to digital technology systems, which we know keep evolving in terms of technology. And so this training for capacity building should happen always and continuously to enable this capacity to.
Sorry, Mugumya, we have
the possible losses that would arise.
Mugumya, I think that's okay. Your point has been made.
All right, so I think that's it. Thank you very much for listening, and let's hope have a good discussion through this. Thank you.
All right, we have eaten most of the time we were supposed to be using for the plenary discussions. So because of that, we are not going to be, we are left with about only 5 minutes for plenary. I would like to just have 1 or 2 questions, if there are any, as we prepare to break out, to go into the breakout sessions. So if there is anyone that has a comment, question, please raise up your hand, and then we shall see you and be able to give you an opportunity.
Henry, there seems to be some comments or questions in the chat room.
So can somebody help us read at least 2 or 3 there, because we don't have much time. Michael. Michael, scan through the chat and pick out at least 3 questions which they can respond to. And then we can, as we prepare to move us to the breakout sessions.
Okay, I see Nsima asked a question around transparency in public procurement. Can you ask, Nsima, I see your hand is also raised as well. So just unmute yourself and ask the question quickly, please.
I'm not going to, I was responding actually to the chats that we are throwing, but my question is on someone from, I think, Liberia, who presented for Liberia. He presented, I saw him project showing the marital status of the people that responded to their questions in both survey and interviews. What was the purpose of knowing people's marital status in regard to this topic of procurement and the procurement of digital technologies? Does it really matter for me to be married or unmarried or single or unsingle to understand these issues of procurement of digital technologies? I thought that every information that would be collected from the participants would be.
Susan, your point is made. Thank you.
Correct. Yes. There was also a question on where do you draw the fine line between public security and transparency, because I think the person is asking from the context of surveillance and cameras installed by government recently. Where do you draw the line of national security and public transparency? I think the question is towards Faminas, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, could we have quick reactions to those ones?
Okay, thank you. I could quickly respond, and maybe any other person from AFIC could add their voices if time allows. But on why was it necessary to capture people's data or study participants' data on their marital status? Well, as I said earlier, this was an exploratory study, and sometimes you may be compelled to find out why, but maybe talking about marriage and not being married might not be really very, very important for purposes of this study. But we captured this to be able to give a snapshot on who participated in this study, and also to allow conventional approaches to conducting surveys, because somebody may have a question that wants to know whether marriage has an influence on anything. But we didn't have that hypothesis, but the intention was to capture the characteristics of the survey participants, only survey participants. And on the line between national security and private data, I think the line is quite thin depending on the justification for surveillance. And here's where I said, if anyone has additional feedback on this, beyond what I'm likely to say, could come in. So the government, the law may allow security organizations, of course it allows, if there is need to obtain individual data, individual information, that can be justified, because a criminal cannot hide. If the criminal somebody has committed a crime, security will need to know who they are. But the point here is when people are volunteering data about themselves, individual data, maybe this time it is for purposes of voting, they are not aware that this data they are volunteering could be used against them. And maybe not everybody who is surveilled, I mean, everybody can be a suspect, but you don't know what happens before a suspect is convicted. There might be, of course, obviously, we know that a lot happens, and some people might worry or fear as to why or how information related to them was obtained. So the most important thing here we want to raise is that people need to know that the data that they have volunteered or given in, or that has been captured, could be used whenever it is necessary to obtain information on them if they are suspects, or it can be used to see or to provide a clear landscape on the safety of the citizens. So you just have to talk about the right to privacy only when it is misused. And I think if anyone else wants to add to this, we could have that as a point of discussion later or now. So, but
I would like to take us to the breakout sessions. So Emmanuel Luca, I noticed your hand. So if you can keep your comment to the next plenary during the breakout sessions. Michael, could you switch us to the various breakout sessions? And each of the country participants are going to constitute a breakout session. You already have people who have been identified to moderate those sessions. And so there's going to be an automatic transfer of members into their respective breakout sessions. You're expected to be in the breakout sessions for a period of about 15 minutes. So we shall be convening about around 3:40. So please, Michael, I hope you will achieve that.
I'm going to create 3 breakout rooms, and members, you will immediately and almost instantly be moved to those rooms. And let's catch up again in 15 minutes. Right, I believe everybody in those rooms has been brought back to the main room. Henry, the floor is yours again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Colleagues, I know the subject is a very interesting one, and people want to spend some time discussing it. But could we have each of the groups giving us at least 4 key action points they think that we can go with, and each one of the moderators of the breakout groups will give us a presentation in 5 minutes. So we have Nena Eze, we have Matthew Wesige, and Olive Kabatwiri. So Nena, could you please come and give us your group's 4 key action points? Please.
Okay.
5 minutes, huh?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
So for us, some of the key action points that we took from our group was USAID, a CS organization in Uganda, creating more awareness among citizens on DTS and its procurement. We also have the Ugandan government. So the Ugandan government has made tremendous efforts in creating or providing acts and laws that guide e-procurement, e-transaction, and data protection. So the gap they are seeing in Uganda is citizens' understanding and awareness with these laws and acts. So they would increase more awareness. They will raise more awareness rather on the acts that are already available. They would also NITA and PPA and the Ministry of Finance are rolling out a procurement system soon. And the first phase would be, would feature only 20 MDAs, while the second phase will feature all the MDAs and all the procuring entities in Uganda. So that will be rolling out soon in Uganda. So they are committed to also doing that. They are also committed to reviewing all the procurements of ICTs in Uganda to reduce duplication of procurement and wastefulness of money, basically improving value for money. So NITA is also committing to continue to do that. Then we have Susan AFIC, CS in Uganda. She's committing, or her organization is committing to carry out more research and raise more awareness. And finally, the government of Liberia, they also have their procurement laws and acts guiding it. So they are going to work with donor agencies and groups to create more awareness and enhance their activities and engage more stakeholders so that the procurement and understanding of DTS in Liberia would scale up. So that's that for my group.
Thank you, Nena. Could we have Matthias?
Okay, thank you, Henry. And thank you, everyone, and my group members for the discussion. We came up with a number of action points for both government and civil society organizations. For government, we're looking at one as fast-tracking digitalization of procurement process to ensure that to ensure transparency in the procurement processes. Then this one will enable people to access more information and know the purpose of procurement of these systems. Number two, they also indicated that the government has an innovation fund for innovators who are engaged in technology systems So if this fund could be reached to all the innovators, then it can also develop their capacities. Then the procurement and the contracts could be awarded to the local firms to reduce on the procurement that is done outside the country. Then we looked at also action point is having the capacity of PDEs to disclose this information. This could be done through capacity building, sensitization on the hypothesis of disclosing this procurement information. Then we also looked at Parliament to engage Parliament to up its game on the monitoring role to ensure that information, because these agencies are mandated to disclose, to give a status report on the information disclosed per entity. So if the government, if the Parliament can up its game in terms of monitoring, this one could also help. Then civil society organizations could also concentrate on having annual transparency reports that are able to identify these issues that are coming up from the procurement and the researchers to enable to engage government with the actual and the fact information that is on ground for their action. I thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matthias. Can we have Olive?
Thank you, Henry. We had 7 actions from the team, and thank you very much, colleagues, for the discussion. I will mention the 4, and I will submit the other 3 to Charity. Of course, one has already been raised by a colleague on awareness raising with the general public on the relevance of DTS on service delivery. From the team, CSOs and media are agreed to undertake research and publish information about DTS to the public so that they're able to know what is being procured about these systems and how to engage in realizing transparency. The third one, government to undertake alignment of national data protection policies to the DTS facilities being acquired to ensure safety and protection of DTS users. And then the fourth one, government to undertake law reforms across countries on DTS, probably have a model law that can be popularized across the countries in Africa to take it up and implement as a good practice on DTS management. And also probably focus could be on procurement, on how procurement DTS facilities are procured, their value and contribution to development, and of course the effects of foreign systems on national security as well. So thank you very much. Those are the actions from the team.
Thank you, all of you, Olive, Nena, Matthias. I also want to suggest a few that we need also to conduct investigations on the misuse or abuse of the DTS. So the relevant individuals, whether civil society, I think that is something that we can do. And also to evaluate the country's preparedness for the use of DTS, because I think DTS might be useful if it is going to be used for payments of staff, salaries and contracts. So you need to do a study to evaluate our preparedness both across the country. Then I would like to inform the members who from Liberia and Nigeria, you are missing on the registration list. It would be nice to have a record of you having been part of this. So please go to the chat room. There is a link there where you can register on the Google Excel sheet. And I would like to inform you that this conversation is going to happen for the Ugandan participants on the Uganda Broadcasting Corporation television, and it's also going to continue on YouTube and other social media platforms. So please continue with the discussion. It's not going to end here. I also like to request you kindly that we spend another additional 30 minutes so that we can bring this matter to the close, because we are unable to do it within the original time frame. I request your indulgence, dear participants. So if that is agreeable, I want us to proceed with the additional comments if they are there, and then we invite Mr. Benon Tumuramye to close the meeting. Charity, Michael, do you see any fellows on the colleagues on the chat room who are ready to make comments? Their additional thoughts? And please, participants, go into the chat room and register yourselves. Manuel, look up, please. You can submit your point. I remember bringing you to this session.
Yeah, thank you, Henry, and thank you everybody for the presentations. I just wanted to re-echo what I just mentioned in the breakout session about to what extent have each of the countries, Uganda, Liberia, and Nigeria, aligned their sort of protection laws for data and collection to sort of, right now, I believe the standard is the GDPR for the EU. And so that, I mean, one of the critical things is protecting, of course, personal data and so forth. That's just a comment I wanted to raise, just to hear experiences, or if the people who undertook the research actually try to look at that model and see it is correlation with the different country contexts in terms of the laws and the policies and the regulations for data protection. Thank you.
Right. I noticed that we had some minister in the list. Can we hear his voice? The deputy minister. Gilbert.
Yes, yes, we are privileged to have Mr. Brown, the Deputy Minister of Information from Liberia.
Is he still online? Mr. Brown, are you still online?
Mr. Brown is online. Maybe it's just muted.
Mr. Brown, sir? Could you please unmute your microphone? Would like to hear your voice.
Are you getting me now?
Yeah, we are getting loud and clear.
Okay. So let me once again, on behalf of my principal and the government of Liberia, congratulate the organizers for this meaningful one-day meeting. I think it is something that very refreshing, and it goes along with what we can build on as a country from this meeting is what you just, the presentations are very good. I will hope that you can share them with me, so that one of these days, as we endeavor to hold our stakeholder meetings across government, ministries, and the civil society, that we will be able to follow these formats. As I said, that we have our procurement laws, they are very good. We have not been able to synchronize, our laws when it comes to procuring. Hello, lost me?
No, we are hearing you. I think, Henry, I think it's on your side, but the rest of us are hearing.
So, as I was saying, that we're going to build on what this meeting had come up with. I will hope that you share with us your final document. And this is a very meaningful meeting. I'd like to thank all of you who put your efforts in this. I know some of your colleagues came over to my office in presence of Mr. Lamin Bakwar, and we had the same discussion. It was very meaningful, and I thought that I will make it, even though yesterday we had a holiday and a lot of efforts went into it, but I made it my day to come to work today because I wanted to be part of this meeting. Thank you for all of the efforts, and I look forward to being part of some of your meetings in the future.
Mr. Brown, thank you so much for speaking to us. We are glad to hear at least the government voice in the area. And I would like to encourage our librarian participants to please register on the link that has been shared. We don't want to miss you on the register. And please, Minister, also register on that link. It's just a matter of opening up that link. You go into the Excel sheet, click on the left-hand side corner and type in your name, and you go across the sheet, and that will be done. whatever you have entered from your computer will automatically be received on our end. So please, our Liberian participants and Nigerians, please do that and register on that link. As we are coming to the close of this, I would just like to go back to my colleagues who are organizing this charity and Michael to see if there's any additional thing that you would like me to include on this program. But I would like to invite one of our colleagues, if there's nothing, to bring this meeting to a close. So Charity, Michael, anything from your end?
No, there's nothing from my end. And I see Charity is also nodding in affirmative. There is nothing on our end.
Yes, could I invite Mr. Muhumuza Edwin, is the Director of Corporations, I understand, to do us the favor and bring this meeting to a close by making closing remarks. So if he's on the line, Muhumuza Edwin, please, let's hear you.
Thank you very much, Henry, and I want to thank AFIC and their partners who put this together. I just want to reiterate the importance of these kinds of dialogues between the different stakeholders in public procurement. From the government side as a regulator, I see we had the policy department, we had for civil society, and maybe in future we could involve some entities and contractors. But the presentation, I think, spoke for itself, and the discussion. The age we're in needs no reminder of how important the issue of digitalization is for all the processes that we carry out. And that has been well illustrated today. We've been committed to that, and there are many from the government side initiatives that are taking place. We started small with the GPP, and now we're going to the e-government procurement system, which has capabilities that bring all these positive elements together. So I want to thank you for putting this together. I want to thank all the participants that have managed to make time from all over Africa, and again, congratulate AFIC and team for this that they have done, and also encourage these conversations and discussions to continue because we learn a lot from each other. As government, we learn from the civil society, but we also not only learn, we get feedback on the things we are doing. The same way, we also are able to become more transparent as these relationships continue being built. And these platforms are going to go a long way in encouraging government transparency. And public procurement, of course, as the largest area where government money goes, is such a crucial area, because once there's transparency and there's light, little bad habits can be done in the light. So with that, I want to, I was asked to close, but to encourage this discussion to go on, maybe even offline, since we've heard from each other, but to particularly this event of today, to close it and pray that these conversations are going to continue and more regularly than we've been doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Edwin Muhumuza, for that. And I also want to say thank you for taking off time on these very busy schedules to participate in this. I want to wish you well deliberations after this, and I look forward to our next engagements going forward. With that, I want to also say thank you very much and goodbye. Be blessed.